Hi, and welcome back to Rediscovering RC. My personal journey as I venture back into the world of RC and RC racing after an almost 20-year hiatus. I'm your host, Julio, and before I get started with today's episode, once again, I would just love to take a moment to recognize and thank all of those people that took the moment to watch one of my videos, who liked the videos enough to smack that like button, and most notably to all the people that took a moment to, comment on one of my videos. In any kind of social media effort like this, I think that the community interaction is super important. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it and I thank you. So anyways, for today's episode, this episode is kind of like an inspiration from my journey so far video, which I'll go ahead and link up above if you haven't had a chance to watch that one. And over the past year, and especially after this crazy 2020 so far, if there's anything that I've noticed in between, Facebook groups that I've gone through and communities such as rctech.net, is that there seems to be a lot of people like me who are coming back from a long hiatus. So in that sense, I figured I'll go over some of the top things that I think you need to consider if you yourself are thinking about getting back into the hobby after a long layoff. Alrighty, so for number one, let's just go ahead and address the elephant in the room right off the bat. So the first thing you need to consider is the entry cost. So depending on how long you've been out of the hobby, I would say 10 years, most likely 15 years, and definitely 20 years like me. Chances are that the equipment that you've had is little to none of it is going to be useful getting back in now. So you do have the benefit, being that you've been in the hobby before, that you kind of know what you're already getting into. So with that said, you're definitely going to think about the cost that it's going to take to get back into the hobby. We're talking possibly new tools, definitely new cars, batteries, electronics, support equipment, etc. So do take that in mind and kind of build a plan around that, as far as how you want to spend it, whether you have the money to spend it all at once, whether you're going to need the budget. But that's definitely an important part. I would hate to see people just get burned out at the beginning, because it's like you get overwhelmed all of a sudden. It's like, oh, I didn't realize it was this much. Make a plan, make sure that you know what you're getting into this time around. Alrighty, so number two on my list kind of ties into what I mentioned in number one, and that is, take a survey of what you have. Again, depending on how long you've been away from the hobby, little to none of your equipment may be good. But if there is some equipment that you have that might still be useful, now's the time to take a survey of it, an inventory of everything that you have, and then decide what it is that you can use and what it is that you intend to replace. So definitely, there could be some cost savings involved there, as far as, things that you don't have to buy again. So that's definitely something that in your favor when it comes to budgeting for getting back into the hobby. So most definitely take inventory, see what you can use, what you cannot use, and that way you'll have a better plan moving forward. Okay, so we've already figured out what we want to do. We figured out what we have. Now it's kind of time to pare down all of those things that that you're not going to need moving forward. Now, it makes no sense really having that stuff around, especially if you're going to be getting new equipment in and taking up space. So one of the things that I personally did early on was I knew that my Serpent Impulse Pro, my old Nitro touring car, was decades out of being anything close to current technology. So that was one of the first things that I sold off. I was able to sell it rather quickly. I'm sure there's enthusiasts out there that like the old cars. So if you have an old car that you don't really see a need for having anymore, definitely take the time, clean her up, put her up for sale somewhere, and make it worth for somebody that's looking for something like that. One of the other things that I currently have that I'm kind of considering is that I still have my Team Associated TC3. I've kind of been on the fence about that, back and forth, but I may end up selling that, just in the sense I know that there's still a little bit of interest in that car. It would be a good opportunity for me to at least get some decent money for it, should I go ahead and decide to put it out in the market. And again, there's always going to be someone out there that may appreciate that and just to have it for either nostalgia's sake, or they just might want to have it to bash around with, or to have for someone else to bash around with, and get somebody else interested in the hobby. So definitely, I mean, in my case also, I have my old RC10L, my on-road pan car. That's something that I've mentioned early on, that I really want to keep that car, and eventually I just want to freshen her up, put a nice body on it, and just keep her as a shelf queen. So again, pare down what you have, and just work on getting the new things. Alrighty, so now we're at number 4 on the list, and even though the other 3 bullet points that I've shared so far are important, I think this one is the most important, and that is really don't rush in. Now, even if, going back to number 1, even if you have the budget and the money to buy everything at once, If you do that, I think what you're going to find is that you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have this big pile of stuff and you're just going to be overwhelmed as to where to start. So one of the things that you can do is, again, it may depend on what you have in the area as far as local track support, the hobby shops, etc. Take a look at what's popular in your area and maybe start there. It could be that off-road is really big, and if you're like me that you want to get into both off-road and on-road, it could be that maybe on-road is not as popular, or there's less places to go run the car compared to off-road. So do take a survey of what's available to you, and again, focus on one thing or the other. If you get into the situation where you're like all over the place, then it may become overwhelming, you may get frustrated, and you may wind up out of the hobby before you actually get in. So that's something that's really important. I discussed that a little bit in my journey video so far, where I kind of budgeted everything. So I focused on a lot of the off-road stuff first, got all that done. I wish I could have been racing by now, but since I haven't, now's the time. I have a little bit of downtime. I may as well go ahead and start working on the on-road cars and get start getting those ready. So this month, if anything, is probably going to be Serpent month. I'm getting ready to work on the X20 and build her up. So I do hope you stay around to catch the video as well when that one comes up. But in the meantime, again, don't rush in. Take your time. Enjoy the hobby. This part is really one of the important things. You're going to learn to love building a kit. You're going to be fascinated by everything that has really developed over these past 10, 15, 20 years. It was an eye-opening experience for me for sure. So enjoy it and don't rush it. Okay, so number 5 on my list kind of ties into what I was saying at the end of bullet point 4, and that is enjoy yourself. Hey, this is a hobby. It's meant to be enjoyed. So I know because it involves racing and competition, there is this tendency to want to just go full bore and just think about, oh, what do I need to do to win the race? Forget about winning. I mean, you're just getting back in after a long hiatus. No matter how good you were when before you got out of the hobby, you're still going to be learning again. So take the time to enjoy it, learn anew, appreciate all the things, everything in the hobby that has developed over the past 10, 15, 20 years. It's certainly, again, it's been eye-opening for me, just all of the engineering effort that has gone into these kits, and things that might have been second thoughts years ago. I mean, they're really emphasizing on delivering world-class products to us. So enjoy the hobby, enjoy building the cars, enjoy driving them, just enjoy the competition. And hey, it's a hobby. Don't get too focused on the competition aspect of it. The results will come later. Enjoy yourself first. Well, that'll do it for this short but sweet episode of Rediscovering RC. So let me know in the comments below. Have you recently returned to the hobby? Or are you thinking about returning to the hobby after a long hiatus of 10, 15, 20 years? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to see your comments and answer any questions that may pertain to my personal experience to see if I can help out. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, I do have an Instagram account. So if you want to see just some behind the scenes footage of me just either spewing random RC thoughts or working on other things, I do post some interesting stuff there from time to time. And finally, if you haven't noticed on the bench here, I will be working on the Serpent X20 Medius touring car. Really excited to get into this kit. I don't think that I'll be able to do a close build like I did with the 22X4. I ran into some technical difficulties while recording that, but I will make a point to if I do have anything interesting along the way, I'll stop to record it, share my thoughts, any tech tips that I find along the way, and build up some content that way. And of course, I will be following up with build notes on this car when I'm done, so please be on the lookout for that as well. So anyways, until next time, I'm your host Julio. Take care.